Hey, I'm Sprout, and I started playing competitive Smash over 5 years ago on Pro Controller. I believed that there was no other controller, and people who used GameCube controllers were just gaslighting themselves into thinking that they had a superior controller. I was originally going to make a video on this a couple of months ago, but I decided that before I make a video comparing Pro and GameCube controller, I should probably spend a few months playing on both. Because I've spent 5 years on Pro Controller, I should probably learn GameCube. And when I went to the tournament Supernova, you might have heard about it, it was the perfect opportunity to save hundreds of dollars into a nice GameCube controller. So I spent the last few months admiring my new controller, and also playing on it, so here are my final thoughts. As you may know, I was very talented on Pro Controller, so making the switch originally felt a bit off, and the thing that stood out to me the most when making the switch was the difference in sticks. Pro Controller had convex sticks with a ring around the outside that held onto your thumb for grip, while on the other hand, GameCube only used convex sticks with sub-rings on the inside for grip. Once I started playing on GameCube controller, I realized it was much easier to grip onto the Pro Controller sticks than the GameCubes. This is because the moment I started sweating, my fingers slid around like a slip and slide laced with Diddy's baby oil. After almost every single stock, I needed to wipe off my hands just so they wouldn't slip. It got so bad that I needed to bring a cloth to tournaments just to wipe off my sweaty hands. Since then, I've learned a few better methods to hold the stick, but I'm always going to have games where this happens, where on Pro Controller, I've never had this issue. Another smaller issue that I had with GameCube that I've never had on Procon was with the bumpers. I was probably the only person in the world who actually used my left bumper over my right. This was mainly because my left hand was only controlling my movement and grab, whereas my right hand was controlling basically everything else. Normally I'd be fine just switching bumpers, but the GameCube bumper is just straight up miserable compared to the Pro Controller. The bumper on GameCube controllers is mushy, small, and hard to reach. I was better off doing curls with just my finger than this. When I first picked up a GameCube controller, the triggers felt like complete ass. I couldn't even comprehend why someone would want triggers that take longer to press, especially coming from a pro gamer FPS background. But the more I played with them, the more I realized how perfect they are. The best example I can give is with my main Diddy column. You might know the tech popcorn canceling where you need to hold down the triggers while in the air. With Pro Controller, if you let the slightest bit of pressure off the trigger, then there's a good chance that you're just going to buffer an air dodge and probably die. But with GameCube controllers, you get a little bit of leniency. Because their triggers register an input before they're fully depressed, if you lift your finger off the actuation a little, the button will probably still be held down. I cannot put into words how relieving this is on my fingers. It's also just straight up easier on my right thumb when my finger is curled like on GameCube than it is straight out on Procon. Now I'm going to move on to probably the biggest factor with both controllers, the layout. The standard Nintendo licensed Pro Controller has a 2x2 grid of buttons that are set at a 45-degree angle. The GameCube controller has a massive A button with the other buttons slightly orbiting around it. Right off the bat, the biggest benefit that I found for Pro Controller was that if I wanted to jump an aerial or jump a special, it was the exact same finger movements between the buttons, similar to a box controller. If I wanted to jump in special on GameCube controller, I'd have to reach all the way over my ginormous Drake-sized A button in order to reach B. This short finger movement is really big in a game where mere milliseconds count, but the layout can't be all that bad for GameCube controller, right? Yeah, correct. GameCube actually has a few advantages that I found after putting more time in with the controller. For example, doing aerial combos felt really smooth because there's no way I could miss the A button. If I'm being honest, the GameCube layout seems to have every single button exactly where I need it, if that makes sense. One of the biggest characteristics of GameCube controllers are their octagonal gates. They seem insignificant on the surface, but if you can get used to the dead zones, doing inputs like reverse down special and tilts become way easier because you know the exact two spots that your stick needs to be between. I tried using a gated Pro Controller shell, but you can tell that the Pro Controller wasn't really meant to have gated sticks. The stick felt way too wide and it made the gates just feel clunky. Personally, I don't recommend getting a shell with gated sticks for your Pro Controller, but on a GameCube controller, it feels perfect. I don't want to make a huge section about this, but I think it's important to note how much more customization GameCube has over Pro Controller. You can find thousands of GameCube controller parts online, ranging from custom shells to stickers to even custom notches. Now on the Pro Controller side, sure they have some custom parts, but the only real place that sells anything for Pro Controller is Extreme Rate. There are a lot of cool parts on this website, but there's nowhere near the customability that GameCube has over Procon. Before I reveal the final results, I'm going to do a quick review on the pros and cons of each controller. For the GameCube controller, it has perfect triggers, a good feeling C-stick, octagonal gated sticks, a good layout, and a lot of customization, all while having slightly slippery sticks and a pretty bad Z button. With Pro Controller, it's really easy to hit all of the buttons, the sticks are grippy and feel good, and the buttons overall feel good while being placed in good relation to each other. On the other hand, it can sometimes feel cramped when doing inputs, the triggers can feel finicky, and there isn't too much customization. For the final decision on which controller is better for Smash Ultimate, I'm gonna have to go with the GameCube controller, but let me explain something really quick. If you're starting Smash and want a first controller, I'd actually recommend the Pro Controller. This is because the layout's a lot simpler than GameCube. You wouldn't need to worry about anything super precise, and Pro Controllers have a layout very similar to Xbox and PlayStation, so if you're starting Smash but are used to holding an Xbox controller, it would probably be easiest just to use Pro Controller. But honestly, if you're a high or even mid-level player, I recommend trying the other option because after all, everyone has different hands and preferences, and if you're looking to put money into a nice controller, it's worth at least seeing your preferences before you get stuck with a really nice controller that you never use. These type of videos take a lot of effort to put together, so if you liked, make sure to subscribe and also watch some of my other content because it helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching.